Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the very important deal between the United States and Pakistan, where we know, of course, that economic cooperation and trade relations have been enhanced further. And this is something that we heard from the U.S. President, Mr. Donald Trump, who said that this is a landmark deal, of course, and in the ways that they want to take a look ahead in the future of Pakistan and U.S. relationship. This is going to be a very significant development, and is quite in contrast to what we've seen happen in the region with other countries, including Russia and India. And so we want to take a closer look at what this means and what sort of developments will be taking place as we develop this further and as the situation evolves. But for now, we know that there is a lot of emphasis on oil imports as well, and it seems that one company has already agreed to import U.S. crude oil and is going to be shipped to Karachi in October. There's also, of course, concern with regards to the tariffs, which seem to be now at 19% as to the previous amount of 29% that was earlier announced. And so this is a very significant development and quite different in comparison to the tariff numbers that have been put on other countries. So we're going to take a closer look at what sort of investments and trade deals can we be expecting in the future, and how will this impact Pakistan's imports from the U.S. And so this is going to be something which will have a huge significance not only on just the economic and trade relations between the United States and Pakistan, but also the very important political and strategic ones as well. So we're going to take a closer look at the announcements and the series of steps that Mr. Trump has taken with regards to Pakistan recently. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farooq Afi and Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined online by Professor Karl, who's a political analyst. Thank you very much for joining us and being a part of the decision, Karl. Happy to have you back on the show. I'd like your take on what we've seen, of course, in terms of the announcement coming in from the Trump administration of the kind of tariffs that have now been decided with regards to Pakistan and the import of U.S. oil, and this very, very important and comprehensive economic and trade deal with the United States. So I want your take first in terms of how significant do you think it is, also in terms of what the U.S. administration is engaging with other countries and the kind of modalities you see on those and the ones that you see with regards to Pakistan.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me on the show. So this is a really important deal for a couple of different reasons. I think it's very important economically for Pakistan. On the American side, not so important economically. The amount of trade that the U.S. does with Pakistan is not very significant in the overall trade landscape for the United States. But this is important for Pakistan. I think it's important for a couple of different reasons. One, I think, is that the United States is looking to build up the energy sector of Pakistan to help Pakistan grow economically, to have a sustainable economic future. And I think that's very important because part of that is to build a more positive relationship with Pakistan on the political side, too. It's not just about economics. This is also about politics. And what I mean by the political side is this is to a degree about strategic competition with China. I think the United States is trying to develop a more positive relationship with Pakistan so that Pakistan will look at the United States as not just a fair weather friend, which is kind of the reputation the United States has had with Pakistan. And I get that. I wouldn't be someone who would say that that's an inaccurate depiction of the United States. The United States has had an uneven relationship with Pakistan. It kind of gets involved in the region when it thinks its strategic concerns are concerned, and then it kind of ignores the region when it doesn't think its strategic concerns are really at play there. I think this is an attempt to create a more long-term relationship with Pakistan that is not just about military cooperation, strategic cooperation, but also about economic cooperation, which will then create, like I said, a stronger relationship with Pakistan and the United States, so the United States doesn't feel like Pakistan is simply going towards China and excluding the United States in its relationships.
Right. Professor Karl, you talked about how there seems to be a tendency of fluctuating interests. I want you to elaborate on that, especially in terms of engagements with countries like Pakistan and long-term partnerships and allies that have existed for quite some time now. I understand this is a trade developing now, but we've had a partnership with the U.S. for a very, very long time and have been a very important ally for the U.S. In multiple areas and, of course, specifically with regards to cooperation on terrorism. So I want your take on when you say that the interests can fluctuate with the United States. What does that mean and what does that imply for Pakistan?
Well, I think there's really two very important inflection points that you can look at in history. There's more than that that are less important, but there's two really important ones. One is when the Soviets left Afghanistan in 1989. The United States just basically said at that point, okay, we're not interested in really South Asia anymore, particularly Afghanistan, Pakistan. It doesn't play into our strategic concerns because the Soviets are gone. We don't really have to worry about it anymore. And so the United States basically abandoned the region, but particularly abandoned Pakistan. And that was clearly felt by the Pakistanis. That here was this country that was saying it was a stalwart ally who just said, okay, we're leaving. Are there going to be negative impacts from the Soviets leaving and Afghanistan kind of devolving into chaos? Yeah, that's not the United States' problem. So Pakistan, to a great degree, inherited that situation, inherited that mess, and had to do what they needed to do. The second really important inflection point was in what the United States would call the war on terror. Post 9/11, the United States and Pakistan had a very close yet fraught relationship in dealing with the insecurity that was emanating out of Afghanistan, but also to a degree out of Pakistan as well, where the United States was trying to get the Taliban out of power and to maintain the Taliban out of power and destroy any remnants of Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. And then over time, the United States kind of lost its interest in that. And part of it was because this was a war of attrition. The Taliban couldn't really be defeated on the battlefield. The United States decided that they were going to leave. And then when the United States left, 2 weeks later, the Taliban takes over. If you look at American strategic conversations about Afghanistan, it just was kind of nowhere to be found. So once again, it looked like the United States was leaving the region, and then Pakistan had to deal with the leftover mess that is Afghanistan. Um, so this I look at this very much through the lens of the United States looks at the area as important when it's on fire. And so what do I mean on fire? That it's a security threat to America, and so they feel like they have to engage. I think now what the Trump administration is saying is they want to engage in the area even when there is no perceived fire. They want to build a stable long-term relationship with Pakistan that is not based on, oh, we need to come in here because there's some imminent security threat from Afghanistan or from Pakistan.
Yeah, Professor Karl, I'm glad that you earlier highlighted about, of course, USA is interested in getting into Pakistan in terms of oil and gas exploration and mineral exploration in Balochistan mainly. And we already know that China was interested, is actively pursuing that. In this case, can we see both of the countries, of course, that are focused in mineral exploration in Pakistan, mainly in Balochistan, they can have a good working relationship in coming years and months in Pakistan, and Pakistan once more can play a pivotal role in bringing both of the countries closer to each other. We already know that precedent is there. In early 70s, Pakistan was the country that actually brought both of the countries closer to each other, and after that presidential visit was of course conducted of Beijing that time, and this time around Pakistan is already there to play its role. Can we say that in coming years and months we can see Pakistan playing an excellent role in bringing both China as well as US on the same table, and once more Pakistan would be of course showing to the world that it is an excellent regional player in terms of diplomacy as well?
I think so. I mean, I think this can be a model for how the United States and China can operate in the same geographic space, compete with each other, but not come into conflict with each other. I think some people conflate competition and conflict. They think that because the United States and China are competing economically, politically, strategically, in some areas, that means that this is inevitable conflict. I don't see it that way. And I don't think the Trump administration wants conflict with China. There are certainly some people in the Trump administration who are hardliners with China, that some of those people feel probably war with China is inevitable. I don't think Donald Trump sees it that way. I think Donald Trump is trying to manage this as much as possible to avoid conflict. So what he's thinking is that, if we can cut deals, and he likes the terminology of deals, that's where he comes from in the business world. If we can cut deals that are win-wins, win for the United States, win for Pakistan, maybe even it's to a degree a win for China, but everybody wins and it means more stability, less likelihood of war, that's okay. That's a good thing. And so this is what I've said before, even on this show. Strategic competition between the United States and China in Pakistan actually is in Pakistan's favor, because Pakistan will win from that. If there's conflict between the United States and China, no question Pakistan will suffer. The whole world will suffer if there's an out conflict between the United States and China. But competition, which means that both countries are trying to invest in Pakistan, both countries are trying to develop Pakistan, both countries want to be friendly with Pakistan, that's in Pakistan's interest. And actually, Pakistan, it plays an important role in being an area where both countries really want to have a space where both of them can operate effectively and without conflict.
Absolutely. Farooq, I want your perspective on this too, because when we take a look at what the US is trying to achieve, it's important to understand, of course, what that means for Pakistan's relationship with the United States, particularly from the US's lens. Also, in comparison with how the US is actually looking at other countries, including India and Russia.
Right, Sana. I just showed you a report that President Trump has just deployed or ordered to deploy 2 nuclear submarines close to Russia. So that seems to be escalation because of the tweet that came out yesterday by Medvedev. Now, I know what exactly is happening. So India, of course, keeps finding that world is more, concerning for it with every passing day. But when it comes to Pakistan and the US, and especially this deal, one thing that is heartening to know is while everybody keeps on talking about 19% tariff, and just to remind everybody that 10% is the bare minimum for any country, right? That means that whatever the number, it has to start from 10, not from 0. But in South Asia, Pakistan's tariff is going to be the lowest. Bangladesh is 20%. India so far is 25%, so Pakistan is at 19. And that is not all. I think that there has been a long-term commitment regarding this oil development and energy field development in Pakistan, that commitment, and umpteen others. I think Pakistan needs more capacity building and more exposure to not only markets, but these investors from these countries as well, especially the US. And by the way, let me remind everybody who's watching that while on both sides there are many people who keep on denying the importance of that relationship, but both countries have done much more for each other than anybody would let on, right? When Pakistan was first signed, defense deal with America at that time, do you know what was the strength of Pakistan Army? It was only 80,000. And most of our Air Force, planes were outdated. They were not even relevant. And then all of a sudden, because of that cooperation, Pakistan started building up its defensive capacity. Similarly, had Pakistan not been there, 2 very crucial wars. One, Cold War, particularly regarding Afghanistan. And then the consequence of that war, that is war on terror. They could not have been won. And they have been actually won, right? So the point is that Pakistan and the US, in a sense, are very close allies. And this is one of the strange and beautiful accidents of history, that Pakistan is very close to China also. So I think that that tells you something about the future of the world. I think both these countries, especially America and China, they are not like Soviet Union. Soviet Union and America had different blocks, and because of those different blocks from get-go, and because of their system which did not compare, they were locked out of each other's sphere of influence. They would meddle in them, but that was the Cold War then. Now everybody that keeps on talking about decoupling between the US and China and then some kind of Cold War, they don't realize how much engaged these two economies are. I did a video short for my channel on this matter when there was this escalation of trade tariffs between China and America. And at that time I pointed out how many million jobs will be lost in America and how much GDP would suffer in China, which has now become the industrial hub of the world, right? So Pakistan is a country that can always bring them together, if not because of the ways or capacities that were visible in 1970s, because at that time there was denial, perhaps out of emotional compulsion. So we can convince both, look, you are very close, just stay together. And I think that that is essential to understand, that everybody who keeps on talking about possibility of escalation, they don't realize what age we are in. We are, moving headlong into, being plunged headlong into the age of AI. And in AI, in 15, 20 years, every job will be gone. AI will take every job, right? Because AI, for the first time, is challenging human USP, that was a human unique selling proposition, that is brain. Because of that, all jobs will be replaced. So there is going to be so many crises. Climate change is also there, and umpteen other crises are there. So I think that in that situation, it is important that countries don't actually define by themselves by their differences, but their mutualities, right? Because of that, I am very hopeful. And by the way, I was talking to a channel in India today, and I felt that the people, because I was repeating the same things, and I kept on arguing that India, Pakistan should also make peace and should benefit. And I thought that the anchor or the host is going to have a heart attack, right? Because they think that we are somehow untouchables, and we should not actually be accorded the kind of respect that is needed for the dignity of human beings. So I think that everybody has to be convinced that we don't have to fight. Yes, competition, absolutely. Professor Karl is right. But competition should not mean undermining each other, because I think that there are enough resources and opportunities to actually mutually progress. And in the end, remember that what benefits one country can benefit another. If we all grow, that means poverty will be alleviated. That means that countries can have their full potential, and people will be healthier, safer, richer, and more comfortable. Who does not want that kind of future, Sana?
Absolutely. Professor Karl, I want your take on the way that we are going to move forward, particularly in terms of the regional dynamics. And as you mentioned earlier, what the inclinations of the US administration is. How do you take a look at the Trump administration and the kind of posturing that we're now seeing with regards to Russia, and with regards to what he has been saying as being anti-war, as a champion of peace and dialogue? And of course, he's played those roles, particularly also for India-Pakistan conflict most recently. But I want your take in terms of how do you view the Trump administration and the way that his political stance is going to affect the relationships within this region?
Well, I think there's maybe a couple questions in there that you asked. I think one of the things that's very important right now, when you look at American foreign policy, is that Trump is reassessing Russia. More particularly, he's reassessing Putin. I think at the beginning of his administration, he thought he had a very strong relationship with Vladimir Putin that would produce a peace in Ukraine. I think he now thinks that he's been played by Vladimir Putin, that Putin told him things that he wanted to hear, but then Trump has realized that Putin doesn't have uh, any plans at all to end the war in Ukraine. He wants to execute it to the end and win it. And that's not at all what Trump wants. And so what we're seeing now is a pretty drastic rethink on the part of Trump towards Russia. I think that has important implications for lots of different countries, for American concerns around the world. So for part of it, I think Trump, to a degree, is saying, I'm not really looking to spend all my bandwidth on trying to end the war in Ukraine because it's just not going to end. It's not going to end because Vladimir Putin doesn't want it to end. So I'm going to put a lot of economic pressure on Putin to try to end it. Why is this important? Because it gives Trump attention and bandwidth to focus on other parts of the world, which he may have otherwise ignored. I think that's to countries like Pakistan's advantage. I mean, if you would have asked me a year ago, is Trump going to spend time, effort, political capital, you name it, on Pakistan? And we said, no, it's peripheral to him. He's not going to care because he's focused on two things. He's focused on ending the war in Ukraine. He's focused on strategic competition with China. Because the war in Ukraine is not ending, I think he can focus on other things. I think Pakistan actually plays into the strategic competition with China part of it because he sees that a stronger relationship with Pakistan to a degree balances China. The last thing the United States wants is for China to kind of clean sweep through Asia, dominated economically, maybe dominated strategically, and the United States is kind of uh, pushed out of the region. So this is definitely part of his thinking that now he can focus on some other things, um, keeping Russia at arm's length.
Yeah,
Right.
Professor Carl, I'm always highlighting one aspect, and that is the future is all about IT, emerging technologies, AI. And it was a happy moment for me to see yesterday that, of course, President Trump's administration is, of course, going to have a cooperation with Pakistan as well in the IT sector. There will be investments, FDIs in the IT sector. And knowing the facts, of course, we know Pakistan is such a country where youth bulge is interested, and they have been producing lots of numbers in terms of graduates, IT graduates, not finding good jobs here. Of course, they were going around places. Now we are seeing that America is interested in FDIs in IT sector in Pakistan. And I'm someone who always believed in one sentence, and that was that when it comes to IT sector, of course, our eastern neighbor happens to be our adversary, India. There was a sort of economic discrimination which was conducted by US against Pakistan in terms that they were investing in India but not in Pakistan. This time around, do you see the potential of Pakistan's IT sector and the youth that is interested in IT in producing all sorts of content and all sorts of services they can be produced from Pakistan? This can be pivotal for not only America but for Pakistan as well, and the kind of influence India has generated in the IT sector, Pakistan is en route to get the same influence.
So one of the things you have to keep in mind is that the markets are going to decide this. This is not going to be decided by the United States government or by the Pakistani government. It's going to be U.S. investors who are going to look at India, they're going to look at Pakistan, and they're basically going to ask themselves, which of these countries is the best bet for us to be profitable? Is it going to be India? Is it going to be Pakistan? Is it going to be a mix of the two? Are there reasons why Pakistan can't look like India in terms of developing an IT center the way India has? Um, there has been some problems in Pakistan in terms of why Pakistan hasn't been able to build up the IT infrastructure, the IT expertise that India has. but that's not a foregone conclusion. That's not something that can change in the future. So I think there are American investors who may look at Pakistan and say, yeah, maybe this could be the next India in terms of IT. Um, part of what American investors are looking at too is, what do tariffs look like? What are tariffs going to look like in India? What are tariffs going to look like in Pakistan? Because that has an effect on their investment, obviously. So if tariffs go way up in India, then it makes it much harder for American investors to be profitable in India. Then Pakistan looks more like a better bet, because Pakistan has lower tariffs and it's got a cheaper environment in which to do business. But what Pakistan has to develop that India has done is build up that human capital, build up that base of people who have IT expertise, who can then use that in a way that's going to be economically efficient and make money for the corporations that invest in it.
Absolutely, Carl. And I think the recent India-Pakistan conflict actually showed who's the head in the IT and cybersecurity industry.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Farooq.
Yeah, Professor, I like your commentary, and every time you're here, I enjoy your comment. I usually want to listen to it. But inevitably, almost every time, I feel like I have to ask something, because there's this casual dismissal of Pakistan that you actually bring up. I just wanted to know, why do you think that a few years ago or 1 year ago, perhaps Pakistan could not even be on radar of President Trump, when this country, I grant you that it does not have 1.4 billion people. Of course, if that was the measure, then China should have been the most important country for investment. But Pakistan has 250 million people. It has so many resources. Why do you think that a country like Pakistan could not compete in international system?
It absolutely could compete. There's no reason it can't. But
Compute.
The thing is that Pakistan has to be a place that is inviting and looks like a stable environment for investment. And I think that's changing in a positive direction. It hasn't necessarily been that way for the last, several years at least. And Pakistan has to work on its human capital. It has to build a more educated workforce. And one of the things you have to keep in mind is that for IT, English skills have to be very well developed in order for those people to be useful in the international IT realm. Pakistan's got that, but it's got that not quite where India has it. Part of its economies of scale, India has a larger number of those people.
Professor Carl, I'd like to interrupt here. Don't you think that's quite a colonial statement to make, that a language is so necessary for the IT industry to flourish?
And by the way, I understand that when it comes to spelling bees, perhaps Indians win because Indians compete more. But why would you think that Pakistanis are not very competent in English, or don't have competitive advantage?
I'm saying what the markets are saying. I mean, I've had conversations with people in IT. There's a lot of corporations here in the United States who have IT professionals who are working from overseas. Where are those guys working? Most of them are from India. I've not heard of one IT professional that's come from Pakistan.
No, hang on, Professor Carl, because the system is rigged in their favor, and it happened 10, 20 years ago when 70-80% of H-1B visas went to India, and that was a policy decision, not a merit decision.
I didn't understand the last thing you said, sorry.
Should I repeat it?
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was saying that because there was a political decision during the Bush administration and then Obama administration that 70 to 80% of H-1B visas will go to India, and that means they have more access to your work market.
And that's why I called it economic discrimination.
Of Indian IT professionals. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, just around the corner from where I live, there's a whole apartment complex, several buildings that's full of Indian IT professionals. They are central to the functioning of the IT economy here in the United States. There was a huge supply of them. They were well educated and they were cheap, and that's why they were brought over.
Right, but Professor Karl, what we're saying is that this was a deliberate.
And it was a policy decision by
It was
US.
it
Well, it
was a
wasn't a
political
merit decision.
decision, so to speak, not a merit-based decision. If you had imported people from Pakistan, they are also excelling. If you go to, Silicon Valley, I can give you hundreds of names who are excelling. They have their own startups and they're very successful. They're from Pakistan. If you
I'm
don't
not
give
saying
somebody
Pakistan
access,
doesn't have any IT professionals, or it doesn't have an infrastructure. It doesn't. I'm just saying, in relative terms to India, they're not comparable.
Reason being, there were investments that were intentionally made in India to produce that, sir.
Are you arguing that the United States made a strategic decision to pick India over Pakistan because Pakistan was on the United States government's bad side at the time? Or was this a decision that was driven more by economic logic?
Intentionally, they wanted to produce and portray India a big power in the region to, of course, pose it against China. That's what I'm saying, sir.
Okay. I mean, there's part of that, but I don't think you can say that the United States kind of single-handedly developed India's IT structure and IT human capital base.
Just in the same manner that you cannot outrightly just say that the two aren't comparable. But thank you very much for joining us and being a part of the debate today and discussing us at what's going on. Farouk, your last call.
I don't want to actually give last comments. My humble submission is that when it comes to, well, perhaps Professor Karl is not going to listen to me, but he is going to listen to a gentleman who was chief economist of India, somebody called Mitra. He has written a book called Tatler's Tale, and in which he said that when India was going through its economic crisis in the early 90s, at that time a message came from Washington DC, especially given after the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. There was an economic crisis in the country. At that time, a message came, align with us, and then you can actually get all the benefits. If you don't, then you are gone. And at that time, India decided that they are going to go with America's demand. And at that time, the name of the finance minister was to be decided, and it is on the page 44 of the book itself. You can see it or read it. That they nominated somebody who refused, and the second one was called Manmohan Singh, who accepted, became the finance minister and the prime minister of India. And at that time, America just diverted its resources towards India, and at that time, capacity building started. There was another big stumbling block, and that was recognition or diplomatic connection with the Israeli government, and that also started, and after that everything was hunky-dory. So Pakistan has its own problems, but India, for better part of history, has this veto on Pakistan. That's why Pakistan does not get the access. And with President Trump, that veto seems to have been removed, and we should be celebrating that.
Yes, Sana,
Yes,
I
you
just
want to
wanted
add
to add in. Let me hail Pakistan's military. I mean, May 2025, it has proven that Pakistan can do wonders. And why I say this? Because Americans, of course, when they give F-16s to Pakistan, they put a bar on us that we can't use them against anyone. Of course, we can use them against the war on terror, but when it comes to our eastern neighbor, we can't use against them. Here is China helped us out in terms of J-10Cs and of course our own very own JF-17s, and when it comes to Pakistan's own advancement in terms of IT and all, Pakistan gobsmacked India, and that's when the Americans opened their eyes as well. Before that, of course, they were testing the waters. They tested the waters of India and it was nothing there. They tested Pakistan, and yes, Pakistan was filled with it. And that's why they are coming towards Pakistan. Number one. Number two, government took excellent initiatives in terms of course, heading towards them, towards the Americans and creating a balance. We are multipolar. We don't want to take any sides. And when it comes to people like, Bilal bin Saqib, of course, they timely joined the ranks of the government, and he is playing excellent role in terms of cryptocurrency, and Pakistan is way ahead in terms of how the future is going to be derived in coming days. And of course, Pakistan is standing where it should be standing. And when it comes to IT sector, we have been putting excellent efforts throughout, but of course we were ignored. The reason behind it is that Americans, they wanted India to, of course, pose a challenge to China. Forget about China, they can't even pose a challenge to Pakistan. And that's when they know, in May 2025, they came to know the reality. And the reality is that the monster they were trying to create against China, that monster is just a paper plane and nothing else.
Yeah,
Yes,
and while it is paper tiger, it also turns against America at times. But you know, one thing, and that actually dismays me whenever an intellectual from the West actually joins us, and they wouldn't actually look at the basic facts. For example, is it just coincidence that for past 20 years, at least 15, every year, H-1B visa, which is for highly skilled, you know, jobs, mostly in IT sector, they come from India, 70 to 80%. And remember that that is not based on merit, that is based on a dipping, right? When you go for a dip, then lottery, so to speak, that means that there was a political decision to engage more Indians, right? And I tell you why. And I cannot even complain about Americans, because America has shown repeatedly how much it cares about Pakistan. Remember that, and thankfully that changed this time. In 2002, if you remember, India had amassed its army on our borders, and it said that we are going to start waging war on Pakistan because of their parliament attack or whatever it was, whatever fake encounter that was. After that, read American memoirs, and you will know that Americans actually came and said that we are ready to give you whatever you want, just don't attack Pakistan. And that is also what happened after Mumbai, when Obama actually goes out to his supporters, his staff, and says, do whatever you want, just please India, so that they don't disrupt Pakistan's role in the war on terror.
Right.
So Americans have been doing whatever they are doing, perhaps for us. But this time, because we have decisively shown to the world that India is a paper tiger, that we can actually give them a brown nose, after that, perhaps the world is reassessing the veto that India had. And I assure you that in coming days, things are going to continue in the same fashion.
And Sana, one-liner that the opera they have been playing against country like Pakistan, that it is an extremist country, the whole time they have been favoring a country called India, where BJP, powered by RSS, was ruling over India.
Right. Thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate as always. That's all that we have time for. We'll now see you tomorrow.